All right, folks, welcome back to the Coachful Coaching Leadership Podcast. I'm David, and today I'm here with Trish Tutton. Trish, good morning.
Good morning, David. Thanks for having me on your show.
Hey, we were talking right before this. You have the Britney Spears microphone.
Mm-hmm. Feeling fabulous.
Feeling fabulous this morning? Before we dive into things, you said you watched Oppenheimer last night.
I did.
3 hours. Yeah. How
3
was that?
hours long. Now, I have to say, I did first contribute to the blowout box office situation that happened with Barbie last weekend. So I saw Barbie last weekend. We contributed to that, which I'm very happy to contribute to. It was an incredible movie. I highly recommend everyone watch it. And then, last night we thought, okay, now we can go contribute to Oppenheimer. And it was really good, nice and long.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if you noticed your pun there. We blew it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, no pun intended.
I did not.
Okay, I noticed that. Dad jokes are my specialty, so any puns, I'll figure it out pretty fast for you.
Here for it.
So, Trish, why don't you give the folks an introduction to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I'll first say where I'm coming from. I am located in Banff National Park, beautiful Banff National Park, lucky enough to call this place home for the last 11 years. And also just want to acknowledge that this is traditional territory where I'm coming from. So this is known as Treaty 7 territory. We're the traditional home of the Stoney Nakoda, of the Blackfoot, and of the Tsuut'ina First Nations people. So very grateful to be able to work and live and play on this land. And what do I do here? Well, as I said, I work, live, and play. Some of my playing involves camping. We just spent last weekend in the backcountry, which I grew up in Ontario and I did not know what backcountry camping was. And probably if you had told me what it was, I wouldn't start doing it. But now that I'm doing it, I enjoy it. You have everything on your back. You don't drive into a campsite. You put everything in a backpack and you hike your butt out there.
So literally, when they say backcountry, you're carrying it on your back.
Yes.
Okay.
And you're going into the back of the country where barely anybody goes because it hurts your feet a lot to get there. And there's no showers and you end up stinking and you have to sleep on the ground in a tent. But that's one of the things that we love to do, to play. And I also love paddleboarding out here on the Alpine Lakes, really beautiful. Get to ski in the winter, of course. Why would I live in Banff if I didn't ski? And then what I do for work is also really aligned with my passion and my purpose. I get to teach mindfulness. And mindfulness, is certainly a buzzword nowadays. I think through the pandemic, especially with high stress and anxiety and burnout really through the roof, blowing up, you might say. But very few people, or I find when I teach it, few people actually understand what it is. And even fewer people tend to practice it. So I teach mindfulness often in workplace and conference settings. I do keynotes for conferences. I do workplace training programs to help people really embody the teachings of mindfulness and really practice them in an easy and actionable way every day so that they can reap the benefits. The main ones that people reach for really are things like stress management and anxiety management and really just increasing the well-being in their life. So I get to do that every day with amazing clients. And that's a little overview. That's the elevator pitch of who I am.
Oh, that's, some really important points you make there. I guess why do you think mindfulness is even more important now than ever?
Yeah. Well, we know that burnout, the statistics are really just rising. And it's interesting because through the pandemic, I think we saw this one kind of silver lining was that mental health and stress management and thinking about our basic well-being day to day, it really rose to the top of many people and many organizations' priority lists, right? Because people were struggling, people were suffering. And I think, it's interesting as we've kind of come out of the pandemic, I think a lot of people thought during the pandemic, well, once it's over, all my stress will be gone. I'll feel great again. And I think many of us are realizing that, oh yeah, regular life without a pandemic also involves stress.
Mm-hmm.
And mindfulness really, and again, I know sometimes to some people it's a little elusive and we can get into, the details of it if you'd like, but it really is all about the individual's actions and attitudes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look around you on any given day in your life and you think, what do I have control of? There's
Mm-hmm.
very little, actually, right? Our world is, by its very nature, it's ever changing. And there's so much of that change that we can't control or really have an influence over. But what we do have an influence over every second of every day is our attitude and our actions. So, in that way, mindfulness becomes an incredibly accessible way for us to have a positive impact on our well being, on our mental health, on our ability to manage stress, on our ability to reduce that kind of horrible experience of burnout that many people have
Mm.
unfortunately gone through.
Yeah, yeah. Certainly, the last 3 years have exacerbated a lot of that,
Yeah.
and coming out the other end right now, it's not any better, and it's not going away.
Mm-mm.
And so, when you talk about actions and attitude,
Mm-hmm.
that's your definition of mindfulness. How do you teach corporations or people at these conferences how those two things, and maybe just give some examples, like how would you talk to an executive, a busy executive, more mindfulness?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say my definition of mindfulness isn't your actions and attitudes. I would say it depends upon your actions and your attitudes, but I'll give you a quick definition just so that we can kind of
Sure.
anchor. Mindfulness that I teach is really about having your attention, your mind, your awareness, you could call it all these different things, in the present moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people might go, yeah, okay, that sounds like pretty simple. But think of all the times when your mind isn't in the present moment. Like if you've ever lost sleep at night, worrying about leading a meeting tomorrow. Let's go to your example of an executive, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you've got this big meeting, you've got information to share. Maybe you don't feel prepared, you didn't have time, maybe there's whatever situation. You
Mm-hmm.
go to bed at night before that meeting and you find yourself tossing and turning, and you can't help continuing to think about, how am I going to lead that? What am I going to say about this? People are going to ask me this question. I don't know how I'm going to respond to that. And in effect, you end up losing a bunch of sleep, right? Then you
Mm-hmm.
lose sleep. You keep looking at the clock going, oh my gosh, now I'm only getting 6 hours of sleep. Now I'm only getting 5 hours of sleep. Now I'm only getting four. Now I'm
sounds like
human.
the,
I'm
sounds
human
like the
too.
night right before a flight,
Right.
early. Like I'm like, oh, I don't want to sleep in.
Right.
Then I don't sleep.
Double check
And
the alarm. Does it go off?
yeah.
So all of this to say, that meeting, the way you run that meeting, whatever it is, maybe it's not a meeting, maybe it's, something else you've got going on at work. The less sleep you get, the worse that's probably that the result of that experience the next day is going to go, right?
Yeah.
And that's a product of you continuing to think about and dwell on and worry. That's a product of your mind not being in the present moment. If your mind was in the present moment while you were laying in that bed, you'd be feeling the warmth of the covers. You'd be
Mm-hmm.
feeling the nice soft landing that you're on. You'd be feeling cozy. And you'd probably just fall asleep because that feels pretty good. And so we can actually teach ourselves using mindfulness techniques and practices, or think of them like exercises, right? How do we get stronger physically? We got to do an exercise. We got to get our
Mm-hmm.
butt up to the gym, to our home gym, whatever. And we got to bust out a couple of reps of some, I don't know, squats or, for me, it's yoga, vinyasas, downward dog, sun
Yeah.
salutes. I have to repetitively do that so my body stays strong and mobile. Well, if you don't want to lose all that sleep at night, you don't want to stress about things that maybe aren't even stressors yet, or maybe in the future, you're kind of guessing what's coming. Doing mindfulness exercise can really help us anchor our mind more frequently in the present moment, which reduces so much of our stress. And it can be literally as simple as, like, folks who are listening or watching right now, take a moment. If you're sitting, put your feet on the ground and just feel
Mm-hmm.
that feeling of your feet on the ground. Yeah.
I'm doing that now.
Yeah. You could maybe feel the chair underneath your body. Maybe you could feel, is the seat like soft and squishy, or is it kind of hard and aggressive under your seat? Does it kind of hurt? And then maybe you're also, as you're doing this, you're listening to my voice, and that's happening in the present moment. So if you're hearing my voice and focusing on that, your mind is here. And you could maybe still feel your feet on the ground at the same time. And maybe you can feel yourself breathing as you're listening to me say this. You can feel how your breath is coming maybe in through your nose. Maybe it's kind of cool as it comes in. And maybe it's slightly warmer as it comes out. It's kind of warmed by your body. And maybe you can feel even your rib cage kind of expanding and contracting. So any of those things, when you turn your attention toward them, that's going to help your mind start to orient to this present moment. Now, that's an informal way you could practice mindfulness because you're kind of listening to this podcast, you're, doing other things maybe. But we can also exercise our mind with mindfulness, which would be like taking time out of your day to do a physical exercise. You'd take time out of your day where you're not listening to a podcast. You might sit, you might close your eyes and focus on your breath in the present moment. And that's called a meditation. And it's really the best way we know to train our mind to be in the present moment more often.
Yeah. It's amazing where we are so focused, or a lot of people can be very focused on the physical. Like, I want stronger legs. I will do squats. Never skip leg day, right, Trish? And so, however, treating the mind as muscle, it takes training as well.
Right.
So if you want stronger legs, you do squats.
You
If you want a stronger mind, you got to train the mind.
Yes.
Now, I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a second here.
Please.
Okay. The skeptical executive and say, Trish, oh, this is cool. I'll do some, sitting down, feeling the floor, helping with my breath. But how does this help me with all the pressures that are happening right now? Yes. I have a boss that's breathing down my neck. I have this deliverable on Friday next week. I have my kids doing X, Y, Z, doing this and that.
I know.
How does this help with all of those pressures right now, Trish? I'm not convinced yet, Trish. Help me.
Right. So a couple things. So first of all, I think the human brain has a hard time sometimes finding or believing that a simple solution is applicable to what can feel like a really big problem, right? When we're really stressed, when we're really overwhelmed, we've been in a cycle of burnout, we tell ourselves things like, I got to quit my job. That's the only way. I got to quit my job and I got to move to Mexico. And I got to get rid of my family because they're causing me stress too. And I got to get rid of all these things. The thing about life, though, is that stress is unavoidable. Mm-hmm. Even the person who's independently wealthy, even the person who quit their job, moved to Mexico, they have stress. Mm-hmm. You might not think it in your current scenario, but they have stress. We all have stress. Why? And it's something I said earlier. The world, the nature of being a human on planet Earth is that things are actually kind of chaotic, right? And we saw that uncovered during the pandemic, didn't we? Mm-hmm. Things are chaotic because there's always change. And all that change, as I also said before, we can't control. So even if your life involves laying on a beach every day in Mexico, there are going to be things that happen that you can't control and you don't really like them. And that is stress, right? Mm. So first of all those stories you tell yourself about, when this project is over, when I get a new boss, when the pandemic is over, when I'm finally, whatever, my kids are finally out to college, then stress will be gone. It's not true. It's not true. So we might as well find a way to manage that stress. Now, I said earlier as well, sometimes we have a hard time thinking a simple solution can solve a big problem. Think about this. How many times on average, do most of us brush our teeth in a day? I would argue about 2, probably most of us, in the morning when we wake up and before bed. And I know for me, I've got one of those electric toothbrush and it times me. So I do 2 minutes in the morning, 2 minutes at night. That's a grand total of 4 minutes. Every time I tell this, I always think I need to figure out what the percentage of like our awake time that is, because I know it's minuscule. 4 minutes a day, plus some hopefully regular dental visits, right, to the experts. But in 4 minutes a day, we really do a number positively on our dental health, don't we, for 4 minutes a day? Mm-hmm. So I would encourage this person, first of all, to think that maybe a small solution can have a big impact on my mental health, on my emotional health. Second part of my answer comes in the version of a story. I work with a local organization here in Banff, and I've worked with them for years. We do weekly mindfulness sessions. We meet for a half an hour every week, and I teach them about some concepts. We do some practical techniques and, like you said, mental exercises. And there was one woman, and she came to every session. She was so dedicated every week. And one week we were chatting, and I said, I just have to ask you, what keeps you coming back? What keeps you, making time for this in your schedule? I know you're busy. I know you've got a lot going on. I know she had kids and a family, and she's got work and all this stuff. And she said, Trish, every time I walk through this door, I walk into this door for this session, I've got problems. I've got stresses. I've got things
Mm-hmm.
personally and professionally that are plaguing me. And she said, every time I walk out of this door after our 30 minutes together, she said, my problems and my stresses aren't gone. They haven't disappeared. But I feel so much better about going back and managing those things and solving those problems.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've taken care of myself so that I can now go and I have the resources. I have the energy. I have a more optimistic mindset to go back to my desk and deal with some of those stresses, to go back home to my family and deal with some of those challenges. Sometimes I use this analogy of like, imagine you're going for a road trip and you haven't paid attention to any of the things on your dashboard, and you've packed up and the kids are off school and you're out of
Mm-hmm.
office is on and you're ready, but you fail to notice that the fuel gauge is low, that the engine light is on, that you haven't changed your oil in 2 years. You drive an hour down the road of the thousands of kilometer trip you're ready to go on, and you're on the side of the road within an hour, right? We need to resource ourselves. We need to give ourselves that fuel, which comes in the form sometimes of stress management, often also
Mm-hmm.
comes in the form of nourishment, taking care of our body, sleeping appropriately long so that we're rested. But we need to do those things because then our problems feel workable. Our stresses feel workable. Your listeners probably know what it's like to be at the end of your rope with stress, and you encounter the tiniest little stressor, the tiniest little problem, and it's like, I can't deal with this. This is too much.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens when we don't manage our stress. When we manage our stress, even a big problem comes our way and we go, okay, I got this. I can do this.
Yeah. How do you, so as you're speaking, I I feel I think there's a lot more awareness about being mindful and how that helps you
Yeah.
manage your day to day,
Yes.
right? Just like brushing your teeth helps you manage your dental health. It doesn't mean you avoid using your teeth.
No,
You still use it to eat,
that's
right?
right.
Um, so, but there's a I don't know where it's coming from, but there's almost like a form of escapism. You want to call it, where, hey, do this and you can escape from all your stress. And I don't think that's the right attitude. And
No.
what you're advocating here, and actually is, I feel it's the right thing, is you're actually investing this time
Yeah.
so that you can manage better all the other things in your life.
Yeah.
Stress doesn't go away. It's actually not a bad thing. It's
No,
actually a good thing,
that's
right?
right.
But when it does hit a certain point, that's
Yeah.
when it gets bad.
Yeah.
So in your travels in teaching mindfulness, what are some of the scenarios you've encountered where I'm like, oh my God, this is a tough situation to solve.
Mm.
This person might not be solvable. Have you ever seen those type of situations?
Well, I'm not there to solve them or solve their problems. I'm there to give them tools, right?
Mm,
It's kind of like I sometimes think of myself like a personal trainer, right? Somebody would come to a personal trainer and go like, "Oh my God, I feel so weak. I can't even pick up my kid or my grandkid anymore. I can't even play with them for any length of time because I'm out of breath and I can't." I'm not there to solve
mm,
that problem. I'm there to give them some tools, some exercises to be stronger so that they can do those, that over time they get stronger. So that's how I think of myself. I'm there just to give them tools to strengthen their ability to manage that stress. I'm not there to fix the actual problem because often, David, the problem isn't fixable. Like,
mm,
literally, think about someone who, I don't know, maybe their spouse has a chronic illness and that's stressful and they're a
mhm,
caregiver. So that problem is not fixable. It's not fixable, but the way they feel and their overwhelm and their burnout, that's fixable, right? And I'm not here to say mindfulness is the only solution, that it's some sort of panacea, some sort of blanket, solution to stress. Certainly, there's many ways to manage stress, but it is one that we know has data behind it. So, yeah, don't get me wrong, I can find myself in scenarios where, yeah, folks have really big problems and it's like, whew, and I need to remind myself I'm not here to fix their problem, because actually they are creative, they are resourceful, they are a whole human being with so much knowledge behind them and experience. They've got the solution for how they're going to go through it. All I'm there to do is to help really their nervous system settle. Because when our nervous system is relaxed versus stressed, fight or flight, that's when our natural problem solving, creativity, that's when that can come to the forefront of our mind. We actually know this from data, that it's this frontal part of our brain that actually does all of our like creative thinking and problem solving. Well, that part of your brain, when you're in your nervous system is stressed, when you're in that fight or flight state many of us have heard of, that part of your brain, it basically goes offline. That's why, as I said earlier, you encounter a small problem, a little molehill of a problem. You go, I can't handle this. Well, yeah, of course you can't, because your nervous system is in fight or flight. The most creative, resourceful part of your brain has basically shut off, gone quiet. So all I'm there to do is to give them some tools to get their nervous system to settle, and then their natural creativity and intelligence of their brain turns on, and they actually end up moving forward and taking steps towards solving their problem if it's solvable.
So are you open to giving an example of like an exercise that someone could take away with them?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Really, really simply. And again, I'll try to kind of encourage folks to, when you notice how simple this exercise is, don't discount it, right? Because think about that brushing your teeth thing. If you had a bunch of cavities in your head, or I don't know, and somebody said, okay, you got to start by brushing your teeth 4 minutes a day. You'd be like, what? I can't, that's not, and yes, there'd be other solutions. But again, over time, that's going to be preventative. So really simply, I would suggest folks anchor their mind in the present moment by paying attention to just three. Again, we talked about 4 minutes of brushing teeth. This is even less. 3 full breaths. And do you want to do it together right now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. So I like to close my eyes only because the world around us is shiny and distracting, right? If anyone's ever seen the movie Up, that is it Disney or Pixar movie Up, and there's the dog, and he's
Squirrel.
talking, and he's like, squirrel. That's like our brain, right? That's our brain kind of flipping out of the present moment and being like, oh, something else, shiny, thought, meeting, task, to-do list, email, right? So I like to close my eyes, because all of a sudden, if I keep them open, I'll see something in my space and I'll be like, oh, got to do that. Oh, squirrel. Oh, right. So I would encourage folks, if they're doing this with us, don't be driving. If you're driving, don't do this. Listening, because I know I listen to podcasts when I drive all the time. So find your feet on the ground as we did before. And then if it's available and safe for you, close your eyes. And now all I want you to do is breathe 3 times the way you normally breathe, except the biggest difference is you're going to pay attention to these breaths. You're going to observe and feel and experience those breaths as they rise and fall. And you'll find as you do this that your mind is right in the present moment as you do it. So let's do this together. 3 focused present breaths. And then when those breaths end, you can open your eyes. And I have a quick question. Were you able to stay present with those breaths, or did you notice your mind wander at all?
No, I was actually very present.
Cool. Second follow-up question. How'd it feel?
I'm ready to go to bed.
Okay, so this is interesting. Our world is so shiny and glittery and distracting and
Mm-hmm.
pulling our attention, right? Often, as soon as we become still, we get a little quiet, even for 3 breaths. Sometimes it can feel, our body can be like, oh, I'm closing my eyes. This must be sleep. So that could be one of the things. Your body just thinks of eyes closed as sleep, and you could feel sleepy. And potentially, sometimes when we get quiet and still, some unresolved things start to like float to the surface. We start to go like, oh, wow, look at all that anxiety I didn't notice I had. Or, and I'm not saying this is for sure true for you, but it could be, or you go, wow, I'm really exhausted. Oh, yeah, I've gotten way too little sleep this week. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of the powerful things about leaders engaging in mindfulness. It's one of the best ways to cultivate self-awareness.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's a little moment of like, oh man, I'm really sleepy. Okay, I need to prioritize that this weekend for myself. And guess what? Down the line, doing that over and over and over. Oh, here's what I need today. Sleep. Oh, here's what I need today. Social connection. Oh, here's what I need today. Some mental space and clarity. Over time, those small steps end up adding up to reducing our burnout because we're
Mm-hmm.
actually paying attention to our, in the analogy I gave, our fuel gauge. Look at
Mm-hmm.
that. My sleep fuel gauge is running on empty. Okay, I need to take care of that. Look at that. My social connection gauge is running on empty. I need to take care of that, right? So we start to develop self awareness. We start to hopefully respond to those areas where we notice ourselves um, kind of depleted, really. We start to fill ourselves back up, and now we have the resources and the capacity to meet life.
Yeah. One of the things I find, like yesterday, I actually closed my eyes for a few minutes to meditate,
Mm-hmm.
and um, I told my wife when she got home, I was like, oh, this is bad. I sat down, I was chill,
Yeah.
then I almost fell asleep
Yeah.
and almost missed the time that I had to go pick them up. So I was like,
Sure.
okay, let me just close my eyes for a few minutes. I'm like, oh man, I almost was late to pick you
Ooh.
guys up, and this is not cool. She was
That's
laughing.
where a
Like, oh,
timer comes in handy.
exactly. I got a time box, and I was like, that was not cool. I was actually ashamed of myself, but it does speak to like, oh, today I'm tired, and I was. I was truly tired.
Right.
And but the thing is, and here's the thing where I used to react in a bad way to what I call woo woo, and I put it
Sure.
in quotes.
Yes.
It's because being a logical person, being driven,
Yeah.
you're always talking about facts, analytics,
Yeah.
give me the next steps. What's the next things we're doing?
Yep.
You discount all the more ethereal things.
Yeah.
However, there it is based in science.
Yeah.
You can talk about Freud. You could talk about the Stoics. You can talk about the ancient Greeks and the Romans. They
Yeah.
talk about the ethereal as well, and these are very logical philosophers. And it's amazing when you just stop for a second, stop all the BS going on in your mind. The subconscious basically brings this stuff to wherever in your brain, and it surfaces. That's what's been bothering me.
Yeah. All the stuff I've been Netflixing away. I've been scrolling on Instagram away. I've been retail
Distracting away.
therapying. Exactly. I've been
Yeah.
retail therapying away. I've been drinking wine away, all the things I've been doing to distract myself.
Yeah.
And this I think is such a good point too, because one of honestly, the biggest reason I practice mindfulness is so that I don't get to the end of my life with a ton of regrets or feeling
Mm.
like I didn't live a life true to me. That actually, the data, there's so much data on mindfulness. As you said, I share it all the time with my groups because I love people like you who are like a little skeptical. I'm like, yes, I can't wait to like share
Mhm.
some. But there's also data around the regrets of people literally on their deathbed. And the
Yeah.
biggest regret, I did not live a life true to me. Well, how do we find out what is true to me? Maybe we need to have a relationship with ourselves. Maybe we need to get off Netflix for a moment. Hey, I love Netflix. I've got all the streaming services. I love Instagram. I love all the things. I love a glass of wine. But maybe for a moment in our day, we need to stop and sit and get quiet and listen inside and be present with ourselves and notice, oh man, this thing, this issue, this emotion, this relationship, this thing keeps nagging at me. What is that? Maybe I need to follow that. Or maybe maybe it's like, this relationship is not a fit for me anymore. I need to get out of it. So
Yeah.
many of us live our lives on autopilot, where we're just doing things because we've always done them that way. We live in the city we live in because, well, this is where we were born, or this is where our job is, or we don't always stop. We don't often stop long enough to ask ourselves, what do I really want for myself? What's really important to me? And am I
Yeah.
making time for it? So
Yeah.
mindfulness can be that too.
Yeah. And I find the best way to answer those, it's not a logical question a lot of
Mm-mm,
times. Like the answer
mm-mm,
is not logical either. And that's
mm-mm.
why you got to give the space in your own mind. Like this is a complex thing,
Yeah,
this thing in our head, right?
yeah.
And it takes that stepping away of logic, like, and not trying to squash it with wine, beer, Netflix. Just you can't. You got to
Right,
address it, and
right.
you got to address it just by brushing your teeth.
That's it.
The 4 minutes a day, and I'm an advocate. Trish, I'm an advocate of this. This is it a small, like what you said, a small amount of investment has a huge return, right? If you want to
Totally.
speak in terms of like money and
ROI.
time, it's huge ROI there.
Well, I actually did a post recently on LinkedIn, and I don't know if you saw it. I think we're connected there, but it was, around how companies, offices, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
often, I'm working with kind of office workers. Um, they offer free coffee. Why do they offer free coffee? Well, it increases energy, it increases productivity, it increases morale. People love their coffee. Data around mindfulness shows it does the same things.
Yep.
So it's kind of like, huh, that's interesting. Right? And you don't get the crash.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to that point, there's an analogy there.
Yeah,
The value of coffee is not coffee. The value of coffee is the people who are drinking coffee with you at the
you
same
got it.
time, going out to have that coffee and connecting.
That's
That
right.
is the value of coffee, not the
Yep.
drink itself, in my opinion. It
Yep.
could be a cup of water. Oh no, I like my coffee. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna lie.
coffee increases morale, I'd say, and positivity and happiness more than water does.
Yeah. So Trish, I do want to switch gears for a second.
Yeah.
Um, you've been doing this for a while, and thank you for sharing some of the tools. I guess, how did you get into it? What motivated you to get into mindfulness and
Yeah.
wellness?
Yeah.
In training people in this.
Yeah. So way back in if you had asked my mom, she would have said my first foray into this was when I was a little toddler. She would do yoga in our living room, apparently to VHS tapes. She told me that one time. So she would say
Mm-hmm.
that was it. But in university, I realized, I feel like university for a lot of folks, it's like the first time maybe you're encountering like quote unquote real life stress. And I found
Mm-hmm.
myself in that situation: relationship stress, family stuff, school stuff, essays, deadlines, all these things. And I was like, I need to do something for myself. A, that is movement, because I'm sitting in lectures and at my desk a lot. And B, something that's going to help me with this stress. And I remembered and came back to yoga. So that's kind of how it began. I continued that as I started to get into a career in not-for-profit events management, actually, which they say an event manager in any kind of realm of that industry is one of the top 10 most stressful jobs. Interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Bless you for
and
doing that.
and I know, and the people now that organize the conferences that I speak at, like, I bow to you. Um, but I found myself surrounded by people who are burning out so
Mhm.
badly and so stressed and so miserable and so, negative and pessimistic and overwhelmed. And I was like, what is happening? And I noticed myself kind of starting to do that too as I progressed in my career. And at the same time, I was still practicing yoga and mindfulness. And I was noticing that I felt like I was handling those stresses of work and life even a tiny bit better than some people. I was managing them a little bit better. And I started to think, like, how do I get this to people who might not step into a yoga studio? Not everybody wants to do yoga, and that's totally fine. It's not for everybody. Yet, these mental tools are so powerful that I think that even people who don't want to do yoga could find them so transformative. And so I really just started to put I have to say, when I said before, that time quiet to yourself of realizing, like, what do I want in my life? What don't I want? A lot of my practice, I was starting to find like I'm just being drawn in. It's like there's a magnet telling me, like, go in this direction. This is, I don't know, something was on my heart saying, this is the direction you need to go in. And because I was practicing, I had some quiet time to listen to that and to
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, let's take some steps. And I live in a tourist town, Banff, and we host a lot of conferences from all over the world. And I started to think, what if I could put together a really powerful, interactive, educational session for conferences that would teach them these stress management skills through mindfulness? And that's honestly how it all began. And it was 7 years ago, this coming November, that I did my first talk ever. And
Wow.
at that first talk, I got repeat business off of that. Rest is history.
so so looking towards the future, where do you want to go with your practice?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maintaining consistency. I think I go back to the brushing the teeth thing. It's like, so I started my own meditation practice at like 1 minute a day, because kind of like the brushing your teeth thing, I thought if I can just get into a habit, even if it's 1 minute a day, I'll build that habit up, and then I could add 2 minutes, I could add three. So now, about a decade into my practice, my own meditation practice, I practice for roughly 10 minutes a day, not every single day. I call it daily-ish. I normally take weekends off. If
Mhm.
I've got some really early morning thing and I know that sleep is going to be more nourishing for me, I sleep. I'm flexible with myself, which I think is, if anyone out there wants to begin a meditation practice or any habit in your life, that is key. Be flexible with yourself. Don't be like
Mhm.
this, cracking the whip. Like if you miss one day, you're the worst person in the world and you're a total failure. So I'm up to 10 minutes a day, I would say roughly 4 to 5 days a week. And honestly, we talked about ROI before, David. For me, sitting and meditating is not, and this might sound controversial, is not like my favorite thing in the world to do. And I don't actually consider it inherently in and of itself a great use of time. Why I consider it a great use of time is because of the effects it has on my life. When I open my eyes and I get to interact with you and I get to interact with my
Mhm.
family and friends and community. So to me, I want to spend as little time meditating so that I can go out into my life and actually live my life. But I also
Yeah.
want to get the benefits. So what I found is that 10 minutes for me seems like a sweet spot right now. That's
Mhm.
enough that I get the benefits. So honestly, if for the rest of my life I practice 10 minutes a day, 4 to 5 days a week, and if that serves me, that's what I'll keep doing. If I find in the future I need more or I want more time, then I'll add it then.
Yeah, and you create the space for that.
That's right.
It's a similar conversation I had with a colleague recently, where you know, uh, you know, the, they have like a few kids, they have
Mhm.
a busy job, they're
Mhm.
getting older as well, and they used to be runners,
Yeah.
right? Back in the day, it was like, oh yeah, I ran hour and a half to 2 hours,
Right.
and now I can't work out. I'm stiff and I'm hurting, and I go, why don't you just shorten your workout and make them more intense?
Yeah.
And when I told him that recently, he's like, oh, I never thought of that.
Light
Uh,
bulb.
It's like, yeah, you can still get the benefits. Like, yes, you need to do the long runs once in a while, but you can still get the health benefits, and spend the extra time, by the way, stretching, because
Right.
you're stiff as a board, my friend. And you get just as much. And
Yeah.
I go, you have to adapt, especially when your
Yes.
life gets more chaotic and with
Yes.
family
Yeah.
stuff and whatever. And I don't know if this person's actually changed their routine yet,
Are
but
you listening? Are you listening, person?
I hope you're listening. But it's so true. It's so true. Like, you have to adapt to the situation. And for myself, like, just my mindset changed. When I was younger, it used to be like, like, never skip leg day. Let's do heavy deadlifts, heavy squats, and
Yeah.
getting injured all the time. And I used to do that in my early 20s, right? Like,
Yeah.
just the knucklehead stuff, right? Just knuckle dragger type of workouts. And then as I got older, I'm like, oh, I need to maintain this.
Right.
I got into hot yoga for a number of years. I haven't done it recently, I have to admit, but I like hot yoga was my jam. And
Nice.
they're like, what do you like about it? I go, I hate absolutely every minute of it. I want to quit. When I'm looking at that, 85-year-old lady there, just, ripping the handstands out, and
Yeah.
I'm like, no way am I going to quit before she does. But I feel like $1,000,000 after.
Afterwards. Yeah.
I
That's
feel like
right.
$1,000,000, and like what you're
That's
saying,
right.
it's the output, the other side of it. I
Yeah.
know this is going to make, like, that small investment is going to make the other side much better, which is like
Yeah.
90% of my day. So
Well, and
you have to adapt.
we all have to evolve and adapt and change. And, that also, like what I'm hearing you say, is also a mindful thing as well. Why? Because another definition of the word mindful is like intentional, right?
Mhm.
Let's be intentional. So it sounds like in your past, your exercise regime was like for one kind of purpose. Maybe it was the way you looked, or maybe it was being able to accomplish lifting a certain amount, or, and then it sounds like things kind of shifted for you, as they do as we age and change. And then you started to get more intentional. You thought, okay, so this is still a good, healthy habit for me, but how can I make it intentional for me now? Now, maybe my intention is to reduce body pain because I'm getting older. Maybe my intention is to reduce injury, maybe increase mobility. Maybe that's where the yoga piece came in. So that really is also a result of practicing mindfulness. Is we get more intentional about our choices in life. We go, okay, here's a habit I'm doing. Is it serving? It served me 5 years ago. Maybe it's not quite serving me anymore. How can I change it? How can I adapt it so that it's going to serve me where I am right now in my life?
Yeah. Yeah. Adapting, changing, going with the flow. It's
Mm-hmm.
funny. The folks who actually say it out loud, at least in my circle, say, "Oh, I'm adaptable." They're actually the least adaptable people.
Lacking self-awareness too, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah. Now you could put a judgment on me and say, "Well, you're very judgmental too," but self-awareness.
Perception is everything. It's so interesting how we perceive other people, they perceive themselves, maybe very different, right?
I was coaching someone recently, and they're talking about this little voice that's talking behind the,
Yes.
proverbially, it's like, that's
Yes.
my stupid friend, right? That's my stupid friend talking to me. I go, well, for some people, everyone has a stupid friend, right? Sometimes you're the stupid friend too,
Yeah, exactly.
but you're also the good friend.
Yes.
So it's okay. You play both roles.
Yes.
So we're the judger and the being judged.
That's right.
So, Trish, I do want to ask you two more questions. One
Yeah.
of them is, I always ask my guests this question: what advice would you give to the 20-year-old Trish?
Hmm. It's so like sometimes nice to think of that version of me. The 20-year-old version of me. It's actually something that I think about often, that I try to tell myself even now. I said it earlier that like the future life, it's relatively uncertain, right? We can open our calendars or our phones or whatever technology we have, and we can say like, oh, I'm doing this next week and this 6 months from now. And we have all these plans, but I think, COVID really taught us like, we don't really know. We don't really know what's happening in the future. Um, and that can be a really tough pill to swallow, and it can create a lot of anxiety and stress and worry. And I don't know what's going to happen. And am I going to be okay? And are the people in my life going to be okay? And um, the thing that I think I would tell 20-year-old Trish, and I tell 37-year-old Trish as well, is like, keep following the breadcrumbs, the
Mm,
little breadcrumbs that start to, and again, it kind of comes back to something I said earlier, where taking that time to be quiet and be still is where I find those breadcrumbs, is where I feel the things that are like tugging at my heart. And by that, I just mean like the things that are surfacing in my life that have meaning to me and that feel important. It's like, there's like, that's honestly how my whole yoga journey started too. I started taking classes, and every class I would just be like, what is happening? What this is like, every time a teacher says something, my whole body is like, yes, yes, absolutely. Every time they taught a concept, I was like, oh my God, I know that to be true. I've just never heard it put into words before, but like my body knows that. My heart knows that. And so I would just say continue like that. has served you really, really well, that will serve you well, to keep following things, make time and space to get quiet enough to listen to what is kind of tugging you in a direction. What do you keep thinking about? What are the things that are just, tugging or knocking at your heart and saying, like, follow this, keep following this. Yeah.
Be intentional about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you, Trish. Last question I always ask my guests is, what question do you have for me?
What question do I have for you? So really, you put me on the spot. Let me just think
That's the
about
idea. And you're going to
it.
do the same to me.
Yeah. Okay. What question do I have for you? What is it in life that makes you feel the most alive?
Most alive.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
gosh.
like the Energizer Bunny, like just like keep going. Like, what is it? You could be tired, you could be feeling that. What is it that like just recharges you? That just has that French saying, like joie de vivre, like the joy for life, the like excitement, and people might put it in different words. But what is it that just like lights you up, makes you feel the most alive?
I remember, so here's an image that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Is years ago I went to a winery, right? I was, my wife and my kids, they decided to take a nap. They're like, yeah, you go out wherever. So I was sitting on a patio on my own. I had a bottle of wine that I bought. I cracked it open. I was looking at, a body of water.
Yeah.
On my own.
Yeah.
I had a notebook, a notepad, started pouring the red wine and took a sip and just, watching the waves crash in and out.
Yeah.
And I was like, the possibilities are endless.
Oof.
The possibilities are endless, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. And connected to that is when, some sort of physical movement.
Yeah.
Right. And now I'm adding like a lot of the mental movement as I'm thinking of the mental movement, the mental exercises we talked about today.
Yeah.
I think of it as physical, a type of physical movement.
Right.
And that gets me alive as well. It keeps me like, yes. Okay.
And like literally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, very literally, it keeps me alive and living
But
well.
it makes sense why it would fill you with it, because it's like that's what our bodies are meant to move, right?
It
So it's like,
is.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I would agree. Same for me.
Yeah. And so when I put those two together, like, that sitting there with some red wine, just doing what I want, the ability to move and the ability to move my mind.
Yeah.
And you put all that together, and I say one line is, I get to do this.
Yeah.
Not I want to do this, I have to do this.
Right.
I get to do this. And that's enough for me. Right. And that's more than enough. And that gives me the joie de vivre that you're talking about.
Love
Yeah.
it.
What about you? What's your joie de vivre?
Yeah. It certainly involves often being outside in nature, like yours. Yeah. Yeah, I love that idea of like just the vast expanse of water and like and the sky and the sun. It's just like anything is possible, right? Yeah, it often involves nature in some sort, whether, I mentioned at the beginning, like hiking in the backcountry, or, I think of times there's a beautiful, I've probably hiked, should ask my husband what he thinks, hundreds, maybe 1,000, maybe a couple thousand kilometers in the backcountry, but one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. I actually, sometimes when I meditate, I picture it. Maybe if I'm worked up or stressed or sad or upset about something, sometimes I picture this image because it really brings me right back. But we did like a 5-night hiking trip, and we went to, and if your listeners Google this, they'll see it's called Mount Assiniboine. Assiniboine, just outside of Banff National Park. And it is just this beautiful mountain in front of a lake. I can send you a link to some images, but it's just stunning. And a friend and I, we went with a big group of people, and a lot of the people in that group are like like level 2 hikers. Like they just can go and go and go. They have like a different gear for this. When my feet are aching, they're like, we're just getting started. And so we spent
Yep.
2 nights at this campsite right at Mount Assiniboine. And so we had one kind of rest day. Well, the rest day, most of my friends were like, let's go hike this, and I was like, no, I'm resting. And my other girlfriend said, I'm going to rest with you too, Trish. And she had her dog there, and the dogs had a rest day too. And we walked, not hiked because it was very close, walked from our tents to where the lake is and the beautiful view of the mountain. And we took, a few snacks, and we sat there, we took our books and we read, and then we would chat a little bit, and then we would read, and
Mm-hmm.
just gazing up into this is kind of like what you're saying with the water. It's like, yeah, if this is possible, if this beauty is possible, it's like anything is possible. This is just,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So just being, in nature and being able to soak up the simple beauty, I think when I'm bogged down in stress, when I'm stuck in the minutia of the everyday, there's a lot of things I tell myself I need to be happy. And, in moments like that, it's like just a pure moment of happiness and gratitude of needing very little,
Mm-hmm.
just fresh air, this needing very little, just this stunningly beautiful view that we hiked, 50 kilometers to get to. But it's like just this moment of like, man, like life is awesome. And I use that word really intentionally. I think we overuse awesome, but it's like literally
Mm-hmm.
awe. Like it's awe. There's awe in it. There's wonder. There's beauty. And yeah, it's like in feeling that as an emotion in your body.
Yeah.
That's what makes me feel
Well, that's wonderful, Trish. Well, it's be 50 minutes.
alive.
It's just flown by.
Yeah.
Well, Trish, I guess where can people find you if they need to
Yeah.
look for you?
Yeah. So you can find me at my website, trishtutton.com. I actually have a couple like free gifts that I offer on my website. So maybe I'll direct folks to one of those pages. If you go to trishtutton.com/start your day,
Mm-hmm.
start your day, there's a free downloadable meditation, and it's called Start Your Day with Calm. And so if folks want to kind of have a foundation of their day where they just begin it in this kind of calm, steady place, no matter what kind of things hit the fan later on in the day. I can't solve those problems, but I can help you start your day with calm. So you could go to trishtutton.com/start your day. And then I'm on, social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Trish Tutton. I'm on Instagram, Trish_Tutton.
Okay, cool. We will include those in the show notes. All right,
Awesome.
Trish. Well, it's been a wonderful 50 minutes with you, and we'll hopefully have another opportunity to chat. But thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
All
It's
right.
been my
Thanks, Trish.
pleasure.